Have you ever been offered a way out, but the cost was your own freedom? For Elena, the answer came not in a whisper, but in the storm that arrived with a stranger at her door. The rain had a way of making the world feel heavier as it lashed against the windows of the old house. Elena Voss sat frozen, a sheet of paper trembling in her hand. Foreclosure. $300,000 owed. The words didn't make sense, not after everything this house had been through, not after everything she had been through. She looked up, eyes clouded, at the man standing near the fireplace. His tailored suit looked untouched by the storm outside, as if no part of him was ever truly disturbed. There must be a mistake. Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. Camden Locke's tone was gentle, but unwavering. No mistake, Miss Voss. Your guardians borrowed more than they could repay, and now time has caught up. The silence that followed was filled with ghosts. Pictures of the Davenports, her adoptive parents, lined the walls. They had given her this home, this chance, when no one else wanted an orphaned 8-year-old. And now, even in death, they had unknowingly left her to fight alone. I work 3 jobs, she said quietly. I don't sleep, I barely breathe. But it's never enough. Camden didn't flinch. 3 jobs won't save this house, but there's something else that might. Elena straightened. Her instincts were sharp, honed by years of surviving systems that forgot her. She didn't trust promises, especially not from men like him. What is it? He placed a leather-bound folder on the table and opened it like it was nothing, like it didn't contain a proposition that would change her life. One of my clients is in need of a wife. Just for a year. She blinked. Excuse me? His name is Ronan Ashcroft, he said. Perhaps you've heard of him. Of course she had. Everyone had. A tech mogul who vanished from public view just as quickly as he'd risen to the top. Brilliant, mysterious, untouchable. Ronan was the kind of man the world wrote headlines about, but never truly knew. This is insane, she murmured. Camden simply shrugged. He needs to soften his image after a rather unfortunate controversy. His team believes a marriage on paper will do just that. You'd appear together, smile when necessary, and at the end of 12 months, walk away with $500,000. And I'd just be... what? Bought? No, you'd be free, Camden replied, voice low, free from debt, free to finish your studies, free to stay in this house, the one you call home. Her chest tightened. It was a cruel kind of irony, how easily her life could be saved with money she never asked for, by marrying a man she'd never met. Why me? You have no digital past to haunt you. You're smart, unknown, and frankly, you're exactly the kind of woman a man like Mr. Ashcroft can trust not to betray him. Elena looked down at the paper again. The foreclosure wasn't just ink. It was the end of everything she'd built from nothing. And suddenly, a stranger's offer didn't feel like madness. It felt like her last chance. I need to think, she said, her voice barely steady. You have 24 hours, Camden replied, already turning away. After that, the offer moves on. Meanwhile, high above the city skyline, Ronan Ashcroft stood alone in his penthouse, staring out into the storm with clenched fists. The glass around him shimmered like the inside of a snow globe, untouched but suffocating. This is absurd, he snapped. Ela Cheng, his longtime head of PR, remained seated on the ivory couch, unfazed by his fury. She'd spent over a decade managing this man's image. There was little he could say now that would surprise her. The government is watching us, Ronan, she said quietly. The chairman doesn't want innovation from someone he sees as cold and untethered. He wants a man with roots, with a family. Ronan's voice darkened. And you think a fake marriage is the answer? Not fake, just strategic. She's clean, no ties, no threats. She plays her part, you secure the contract. Then you both walk away. He turned away from her, jaw tight. Somewhere deep inside, a memory flickered just out of reach. A feeling he hadn't allowed himself in years. And now, a stranger would be asked to stand by his side and pretend she belonged there. 1 year. 1 contract. 1 lie big enough to change the course of everything. Don't mention her name. Isla's voice cut through the tension, calm but unmistakably sharp. This isn't about your broken engagement, Ronan, she continued. The Department of Defense doesn't care who you loved or lost. They care about one thing, stability. He turned away, jaw clenched, staring through the rain-drenched glass. Below them, the glowing city flickered like a restless machine. Ashcroft Technologies stood tall among the skyline, 30 floors, of steel and ambition that Ronan had built from the ground up. And now, all of it was in jeopardy. You need to look settled. Reliable, Isla said, standing and adjusting the crease of her blazer. Old men with billion-dollar defense budgets want to feel safe when they sign contracts. And nothing says safe like a devoted husband. Ronan scoffed, but didn't argue. Camden Locke has identified someone, she continued, handing him a sleek tablet. No ties, no scandals, no connections to this industry, a clean slate. Ronan hesitated before looking down at the screen. A profile appeared. Elena Voss, 23, nursing student, orphaned young, adopted by a working-class couple who passed away 2 years ago, drowning in student debt. Home under foreclosure, a nobody to the world, but not to him. There was something in her photo, something unreadable, yet eerily familiar. Her eyes held a stillness, a storm waiting behind calm waters. She looks... He paused, searching for the word. Familiar. You've never met her, Isla replied gently. We checked. She handed him a pen and a printed contract. Your signature is the only thing standing between you and a $2 billion deal. The pen felt heavier than it should have. He hesitated. If she causes problems? He asked. The contract is ironclad, Isla said. If either of you breaks it, she walks away with nothing. 3 days later, Elena stood in a sterile city hall, wearing a borrowed dress that didn't quite fit and heels that pinched. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant and disappointment. Camden Locke stood beside a tall, elegant woman he introduced as Isla. Neither smiled. At the end of the aisle, Ronan Ashcroft waited like a statue, tall, sharp, unreadable. He hadn't said a word to her, only offered occasional nods and glances that felt colder than the marble floors beneath their feet. You may now kiss the bride, the officiant said. Elena's heart beat so loudly it drowned out the silence. Ronan leaned in, his expression a mask of control. The kiss was meant to be a formality, but the moment their lips touched, something impossible happened. A jolt, real, physical, rushed through them both, like lightning breaking through bone. They jerked apart in shock, gasping for breath, eyes wide with something they didn't yet understand. In that instant, an image flashed behind their eyes, 2 children, small and afraid, holding hands in a white room, while wires ran from their heads to blinking machines. Ronan stumbled back, stunned, his usual composure fractured. What the hell was that? He demanded. Elena touched her lips, still tingling. I don't know, she whispered. Did you feel? He cut her off with a glare, suspicion rising like smoke. Camden stepped forward quickly. Is there a problem? No, Ronan snapped. Everything's fine. He grabbed Elena's wrist and led her from the room with quiet urgency. Just before the doors closed behind them, she heard him mutter, Whatever this is, whatever game you're playing, it ends now. But deep inside, they both knew the truth that moment wasn't a game. It was a memory neither of them should have had. Outside, the black luxury car sped through the soaked streets of New York, its headlights cutting through the mist. Elena sat rigid, pressed against the door, trying to make sense of the surreal wedding that had just occurred and the strange vision that had come with it. Ronan said nothing. Neither did she. But between them, the silence pulsed with something electric, something neither of them could yet explain, but both of them could feel. The silence between them stretched, filled with the lingering echo of something neither of them could explain. That strange electric sensation from their kiss hovered in the air like an unwelcome guest. Ronan's phone buzzed again, another notification, another obligation, but he ignored it. His eyes remained fixed on the window, the glow of the city lights reflecting across his sharp profile like fractured glass. Finally, he spoke, his voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. "We're leaving for Newport. 1 hour." Elena turned to him. "Newport? I thought you lived in the city." "My primary residence is there," he replied curtly. "The press release goes out in the morning. We need to be there before the headlines hit." A knot formed in her stomach. "I need to pack." "It's done?" he interrupted. "Isla sent a team. Everything you need is already at the estate." Her mouth went dry. Strangers had been in her home, touching her things, her memories. Ronan glanced at her then, his eyes cold. "You signed the contract." Page 4, paragraph 3. Privacy was never part of the agreement. The car slowed as they arrived at a private airfield. A sleek black helicopter waited, blades already slicing the air in rhythmic hums. "I hate flying," she muttered, more to herself than to him. "You'll get used to it," he said, already stepping out, offering no hand, no glance back. As the helicopter lifted off, Elena looked down at the city below, at the roof of the little house she'd fought so hard to save. From above, it looked like a toy, small, distant, already a part of another life. The Ashcroft estate revealed itself like a secret whispered to the sea. It sprawled across 5 acres of oceanfront cliffs, the main house built from glass and stone, standing boldly against the Atlantic wind. When they landed, a handful of uniformed staff stood waiting in flawless formation. "Welcome home, Mr. Ashcroft," said a graceful older woman with silver hair, swept into a bun. "This is Elena," Ronan said briskly. "My wife." The word hung in the air, stiff, foreign, unreal. The woman offered a polite nod. "I'm Mrs. Alden, the house manager. Your suite is ready, Mrs. Ashcroft." Elena flinched at the name. Mrs. Ashcroft. It didn't feel like hers. "Would you like anything after your journey?" "I need to work," Ronan said before Elena could answer. "Take her to the East Wing." And just like that, he disappeared into the house, leaving Elena standing on the helipad, the sea howling behind her. The east wing of the mansion was larger than her entire childhood home. Her suite had its own bedroom, sitting room, bathroom, and a balcony that opened out to the endless gray of the ocean. The closets were already filled with clothing, everything in her size, none of it familiar. Mrs. Alden gestured toward a neat stack of boxes in the corner. "Your personal items are here. Dinner is at 7, though Mr. Ashcroft rarely leaves his office for meals." When she was alone, Elena Simp opened the top box. Inside were her photographs, her worn-out nursing textbooks, a chipped ceramic mug that had belonged to her mother, and at the very bottom, wrapped in soft fabric, was the faded stuffed bear she had carried from foster home to foster home. She sat on the edge of the bed and held it close. Somehow, the quiet of this place felt louder than any siren. She tried not to cry. She had made a choice, 1 year, $500,000. On paper, it made sense. But now, standing in the stranger's house, wearing his name, she began to wonder what part of herself she had traded away. Her phone buzzed. Remember your NDA, no contact about the arrangement, first payment transferred, CL. She opened her banking app. $50,000, enough to stop the foreclosure. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt bought. Dinner was served at an impossibly long table that could seat 20, though only one plate waited at the head hers. Perfectly grilled salmon, arranged like art on porcelain. No sign of Ronan. The food was flawless. But it felt like eating in a museum. Restless, she wandered the halls afterward. The house was silent, almost eerily so. Expensive, yes, but soulless. Like a hotel designed for people who didn't intend to stay long. No family photos, no clutter, only immaculate furniture and a few rare pieces of abstract art. It was beautiful and empty, just like their arrangement. The house had no warmth. Elena wandered its halls like a quiet ghost, passing sleek corridors, dressed in cold marble and designer silence. There were no family portraits, no childhood trinkets, no chipped mugs from forgotten mornings. Only curated pieces of modern art, so expensive they could probably pay for her entire education, and yet they said nothing about who lived here. She found the library by accident. It was tucked away behind a heavy wooden door and felt different from the rest of the house. Lived in. Human. Books, some open mid-thought, were scattered across the tables. A half-empty glass of whiskey rested beside a worn leather chair, its cushions indented by someone who spent time here. She ran her fingers along the spines of the books. For the first time since arriving, she felt like she'd stepped into someone's life, not just their image. "You're not supposed to be in here!" The voice startled her. Ronan stood in the doorway, his tie loose, jacket slung over his shoulder. He didn't sound angry, just certain. Like everything in his world had a designated place, and this was not hers. "I'm sorry," Elena said softly. "I was just wandering." He stepped inside, crossing to a desk where digital schematics glowed on a screen. "This room is private," he said, but he didn't ask her to leave. She should have gone. Instead, the question burst out of her before she could stop it. "What happened earlier, when we kissed?" Ronan's shoulders tensed. His fingers paused above the keyboard. "Elena, that wasn't static," she interrupted. "We saw something. Children, wires, a lab. You saw it too." He stayed silent. "We've met before, haven't we?" she asked gently. "Even if we don't remember how?" He turned to her, his face unreadable. "It's irrelevant. Whatever it was, it means nothing." "No," she said. "It means something. A contract doesn't create visions." For a flicker of a moment, doubt crossed his face, but then the mask slid back into place. "I have work to finish," he said, voice colder now. "There's a separate entrance to your room. The code is 1984. Don't wander beyond the gardens. The grounds are monitored." She met his eyes. "Am I your wife or your prisoner?" He let out a dry laugh, but there was no joy in it. "Does it make a difference? We both signed away our freedom." After he left, she noticed a newspaper on the desk. The headline read, "Ashcroft Technologies, Pentagon's leading bidder for 2x AI contract." Everything fell into place. The sudden urgency. The picture-perfect wedding. She wasn't a partner. She was a strategy. An investment. The next morning brought gray skies and a chill that clung to the windows. A message from Mrs. Alden appeared on her tablet. "Mr. Ashcroft has left for New York. He'll return tomorrow. Your schedule is updated." Elena opened the tablet. Appointments, stylists, etiquette sessions, background briefings on Ashcroft Technologies to help her blend in. It was all carefully designed to reshape her into someone else's idea of a perfect wife. Her stomach dropped at the final entry charity gala. First public appearance as Mrs. Ashcroft. 3 days. 3 days to become someone else entirely. That afternoon, A stylist rambled about color palettes and hem lengths, but Elena's head began to ache sharp and sudden. Her vision blurred. Images surged behind her eyes, that same white lab, a woman in a lab coat, a man who looked eerily like Ronan, taking notes. The same strange current from their kiss, now pulsing in her mind. "Elena, are you all right?" the stylist asked, her voice sounding distant. I need air," Elena mumbled, stumbling toward the balcony. Outside, the wind whipped against the cliffs. The ocean roared below, untamed and furious, a wild contrast to the life she now inhabited, polished and controlled. Her phone buzzed. A message. "Meet me at the boathouse, 3:00 p.m. Come alone. No name, no number." The message disappeared a moment after she read it. Her first instinct was caution. It could be a journalist, or worse, someone who knew about the contract. But curiosity burned brighter than fear. Anything was better than being fitted for a role she never asked for. The boathouse sat on the edge of the estate, half hidden beneath pine trees, the path damp with salt and silence. She checked the time. 3:05. No one was there. She turned to leave. "You look just like your mother." The voice came from the shadows. An older man stepped into the light, his eyes cautious but kind, his coat heavy with rain. "Who are you?" Elena asked, startled. "Dr. Marshall Hayes," he said. "I worked with your parents." Her breath caught. "The Davenports? No," he said gently. "Your real parents, the ones you don't remember." "When I was 8, Elena began, they told me my birth parents died." Dr. Hayes looked at her with quiet sorrow. "That's what they wanted you to believe." He reached into the pocket of his coat and handed her a folded, time-worn photograph. This was taken at Ashcroft Research Center, 1999. She opened it slowly. The faces were younger, but unmistakable. 4 scientists stood inside a sterile lab, its white walls and blinking monitors, identical to the ones from her strange vision. In the center were a man and a woman she had only ever seen in dreams. Her dreams. "These are your parents?" Hayes said softly. "Elizabeth and James Voss. Brilliant minds, idealists." And beside them, he pointed to the other couple, Thomas and Margaret Ashcroft, Ronan's parents. The 4 of them were partners. Together, they built something the world wasn't ready to understand. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. What were they working on? "Project Mirror," Hayes said. "It was an experiment in neural connectivity, a way to link minds. Your parents believed it could change the world for the better, but others had different ideas." She took a step back. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because something happened when you and Ronan kissed at City Hall. Something they buried inside you 15 years ago woke up." Her heart thundered in her chest. "How do you even know about that?" "I've been waiting for it," he said, his eyes urgent now, waiting for the moment it would return. "And I'm not the only one. There are people who would do anything to keep this secret buried. People like Sterling Pierce." "My lawyer?" she said, disbelief thick in her voice. "He's not your lawyer," Hayes replied grimly. "He's the architect of this entire scenario. The marriage, the contract, even your reunion with Ronan, it was all orchestrated, controlled. He wants you two together, but not for love, for data." Before Elena could even process what she was hearing, a shrill alarm shattered the stillness. Hayes turned toward the trees, already backing away. "They've found me." He stepped close, pressing something cold into her hand. "A key," he said. "Storage unit 237. Providence Central. Everything you need to understand the truth is in there." And with that, he vanished into the woods just as a wave of security guards rounded the path behind her. That night, Elena sat on the edge of her bed, turning the small silver key over in her palm. Hayes had been scared, truly scared, and yet what he told her sounded like something out of a storybook. Neural connections, secret experiments, hidden memories. And yet, the vision she and Ronan had shared had been real. The lab, the children, the sensation. She looked toward the window, out at the vast estate surrounding her. Her husband, if that word even meant anything, was keeping something from her. And now, for the first time, she had a way to uncover it. She awoke with a gasp, drenched in cold sweat. The dream was sharper this time. She was a child again, bare feet on white tile, wires clinging to her head. Someone whispered her name, and behind her eyes, a burning sensation at the base of her skull. She reached up instinctively, fingers brushing the nape of her neck. A scar, tiny, barely visible. One she'd always believed came from falling off a swing. Now, she wasn't so sure. Golden light spilled through the windows as dawn broke over the Atlantic. Her suite sparkled like a museum, all glass and untouched elegance. It was her third day in this house, and still, it didn't feel like home. It felt like a stage. A notification blinked on her tablet. Mr. Ashcroft has traveled to New York. He'll return this evening. Gala preparations begin at 2 p.m. Her eyes fell to the key again. Providence was only 40 minutes away. If she left now, she could be back before anyone noticed. But security would be watching. She couldn't just walk out. The answer came at breakfast. Mrs. Alden, the housekeeper, was reviewing her plans for the day. "I'll be heading to the farmer's market this morning," she said, almost absent-mindedly. Elena smiled. "Would you mind if I joined you? I could use some fresh air." Mrs. Alden looked surprised and pleased. "Of course, Mrs. Ashcroft. We leave in 30 minutes. Once they reached Newport, Elena leaned forward in the car. "Could you drop me off at that boutique on the corner?" she asked sweetly. "I'd love to find something special for the gala, something to surprise my husband." Mrs. Alden smiled knowingly. "Take your time, dear. I'll meet you back here in 2 hours." The moment the car vanished around the corner, Elena stepped off the curb and hailed a taxi, her heart pounding as she whispered the words aloud for the first time. Providence Central Storage. The taxi ride passed in a blur, rain trailing down the window like 1,000 silent thoughts. Elena clutched the small silver key in one hand, her black credit card in the other, issued by Sterling Pierce himself. Under the guise of emergencies, she arrived at a plain, unmarked building nestled between office blocks in downtown Providence. No sign, no receptionist, just silence. Unit 237, second floor. The key turned smoothly in the lock, the door creaking open like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside was a single metal filing cabinet. Nothing else. She opened the first drawer. Personnel files. Dozens of them. Each stamped Project Mirror. Ashcroft Research Facility, 1997-2003. She scanned the names. Thomas Ashcroft, Margaret Ashcroft, James and Elizabeth Voss. All 4 exact matches from the photo Hayes had shown her. The second drawer held medical records, not by name, but by number. Subject 7L, her birth date. Subject 12T, a date she recognized immediately. Ronan's birthday. Her stomach turned. She opened the files, hands trembling. Clinical terms leapt off the page: neural synchronization, empathic transmission, telepathic amplification. Photos were paper-clipped to the documents, children in sterile white rooms, electrodes on their heads, faces eerily blank. It was the same place she'd seen in her dreams, the same one she and Ronan had seen together. One report made her blood freeze. Subjects 7L and 12T demonstrate extraordinary compatibility. Neural pathways have successfully integrated across distinct brain structures. Proximity increases cognitive bandwidth. Emotional resonance is measurable. Further testing required. They had experimented on children. On them. She took photos of everything shaky, but careful, then closed the drawer, her thoughts unraveling into 100 tangled threads. She didn't remember driving back to Newport. By the time she stepped out of the taxi, Mrs. Alden's car was pulling up, as expected. Elena smiled, her alibi intact. Back at the estate, everything moved quickly. Stylists descended on her like choreographed dancers, hair pinned, makeup dusted, silk gowns zipped. Elena barely spoke. Her thoughts were still in that storage room, still locked inside cold folders and unspeakable truths. Why connect two children's minds? Why build a marriage around a secret from 15 years ago? And what had they unleashed when she and Ronan kissed? "You seem distant," said Isla, stepping into the dressing room. Her tone was pleasant, but her gaze was sharp. Elena glanced at her reflection, dark blue silk, diamonds at her collarbone, a flawless updo that masked the faint scar at the nape of her neck. "I'm fine," she said. "Tonight is important," Isla pressed. "The chairman of the Pentagon Appropriations Committee will be attending, as well as half the East Coast's defense investors. I know my role. Do you?" Isla tilted her head. "Because your husband has spent 15 years building toward this contract. I won't let you be the reason he loses it." The warning was clear. "We want the same thing, Miss Chung," Elena replied evenly. A seamless evening. Isla's phone buzzed. She checked the screen. His helicopter just landed. "He'll meet you downstairs in 20 minutes. She paused at the doorway. "One more thing. Vivian Langley will be in attendance." Elena looked up. "Ronan's ex-fiancée? The media will be watching closely. Handle it gracefully." Alone again, Elena stared at her reflection. She looked the part, polished, composed, untouchable. But behind the silk and diamonds, she was something entirely different. Not a wife, not a fraud, a subject. 7L. Somehow neurologically tethered to a man she was never supposed to know. Ronan was waiting at the bottom of the grand staircase. A portrait of control in a tailored tuxedo. As she descended, his eyes flicked up just for a moment, and something unreadable passed through them. "You look appropriate," he said. "High praise," she replied dryly, slipping her arm into his. In the limousine, silence stretched between them, taut and unresolved. Finally, Elena broke it. "Tell me about Vivian." His jaw tightened. "That's not part of the arrangement." "She'll be there tonight," Elena said quietly. "I deserve to know." He stared out the window for a long time. She thought he might not answer. "When we were engaged," he began slowly, "everything looked perfect. On paper. But 3 weeks before the wedding, she sold Classified Designs my work on quantum encryption to a competitor." His hand curled into a fist against his leg. "We lost a major contract with the NSA. She cost my company a $1 billion deal, and almost cost me my reputation." "I'm sorry," Elena said, gently. "Don't be," he said flatly. "It wasn't personal, it was business." But she felt it through that invisible tether still humming between them. The betrayal had cut deep, because it had been personal. Ronan's fingers drummed once against his knee, the only outward sign that he felt anything at all. "The fallout was contained," he said, "but it cost us a $1 billion contract with the NSA." "I'm sorry," Elena said softly. "Don't be." It was a business lesson. He turned to her, and his voice cooled. "Everyone has a price. Just remember that tonight." The Providence Art Museum had been transformed. Golden chandeliers bathed the grand hall in warm light. A soft symphony hummed beneath the murmur of expensive laughter and clinking glasses. The air was rich with perfume, politics, and the quiet buzz of ambition. Elena moved through it all like a shadow wrapped in silk. Ronan's hand steady at the small of her back. He introduced her to senators, CEOs, and defense strategists as though she'd always belonged beside him. She nodded, smiled, played her role flawlessly, but inside, her mind was racing. Was this all orchestrated? Was Sterling Pierce watching from somewhere in this room? Was this gala just another act in a play she never auditioned for? Senator Jenkins, Ronan said smoothly, may I introduce my wife? The senator, a broad man with warm eyes and a firm handshake, kissed Elena's hand. Ashcroft, you've been hiding a gem. Where did you find this lovely creature? Boston, Ronan replied without hesitation. We wanted a little privacy before going public. Smart man, the senator winked. Marriage looks good on you, gives investors confidence, shows you've got roots. As the men discussed contracts and strategy, Elena scanned the crowd, and then she saw her. A striking blonde in crimson stood across the ballroom, eyes locked on Elena with unveiled hostility. Vivian Langley. Elena slipped away toward the restroom, needing a moment of silence. But as she stood at the sink, dabbing her lip with a tissue, the door opened and Vivian walked in. So? Vivian said, her voice smooth as glass and twice as cold. You're the replacement. Elena turned slowly. Vivian, right? Ronan mentioned you. I'm sure he did, Vivian said, stepping closer, her perfume thick and deliberate. Let me save you some heartache. Whatever he's paying you, it's not worth it. I don't know what you mean. Vivian gave a light, humorless laugh. Of course you do. Ronan doesn't do love. He collects assets. I was the socialite with connections. You're the sweet-faced nurse meant to win over military budgets. Next year, he'll find another role to cast. You sound bitter. I sound experienced, Vivian said, her smile sharp enough to cut. Word of advice, get everything in writing. Because Ronan's promises, they evaporate the moment you're no longer useful. Elena should have walked away. But too much had unraveled in the past few days, and the weight of it all cracked through her composure. Like when you sold his company's secrets? She asked. Vivian's expression faltered for the briefest second. Is that what he told you? She recovered quickly. You should ask him about the Nightingale Protocol. Ask him what really happened in that fire 15 years ago. Before Elena could speak again, the door flew open. Isla stood there, tension radiating from her posture. There you are, she said sharply. Elena, the chairman is about to speak. Ronan is looking for you. Back in the ballroom, Ronan found her before she could find him. He placed a firm hand on her arm. Stay away from Vivian. She found me, Elena whispered. Ronan, what's the Nightingale Protocol? His fingers tightened hard. Where did you hear that? But before he could demand more, the senator's voice echoed through the grand hall. Ladies and gentlemen, Jenkins announced from the podium, it is my honor to reveal that the Pentagon's Advanced Defense Initiative has selected Ashcroft Technologies to lead the next generation of national intelligence. Applause thundered through the room. Cameras flashed. Ronan stepped forward to shake Jenkins's hand, picture perfect in every way. Give us a kiss, someone shouted. Let's see the newlyweds. The crowd began to chant, their voices rising in teasing celebration. Ronan turned to Elena, his face unreadable. He leaned in, careful, controlled, barely brushing her lips with his. But it was already too late. The current surged the instant they touched. Not symbolic, not emotional, real, physical, alive. They jerked back simultaneously, eyes wide, breath stolen. And then, behind their eyes, it returned, flashes of white rooms, children's voices, screams buried under layers of memory, a fire, a separation, a severed connection. They were not hallucinations. They were pieces of a past that refused to stay hidden. The vision was sharper this time, almost too real. Children ran, barefoot and frightened, down a sterile, white corridor. Alarms shrieked. Red lights flashed. Smoke curled through the hallway like a predator. Somewhere behind them, a door slammed shut. A scream cut short. Elena jerked away, breath stolen. Ronan's hand was at her waist, steadying her, but his eyes burned with something far fiercer than concern. In the back of the limousine, silence shattered the moment the doors closed. "What was that?" he demanded. "What are you doing to me?" "I'm not doing anything," Elena shot back. "This is happening to both of us." "That's impossible." "Is it?" she countered. "What about Project Mirror? What about Subject 7L and Subject 12T?" His entire body stilled. "How do you know those names?" "The same way I know about the Nightingale Protocol," she replied. Her voice was calm, but it was half bluff, half truth. "I've been looking into our past." For the first time since she met him, fear flickered across Ronan's face. "You don't know what you're playing with." "Then help me understand," she said quietly. "What did they do to us, Ronan? Why can we see the same things, feel the same things? What are we?" He looked away, jaw tight. "They aren't memories," he murmured. "They can't be. I never—" But he stopped, and then, as if driven by some unconscious reflex, his hand rose to the back of his neck, to the exact spot where her own scar was hidden beneath her hair. The gates of the estate swung open, and the limousine pulled to a stop. Before it had even fully halted, Ronan was out the door. "This conversation is over," he called over his shoulder. She watched him disappear into the mansion. His composure cracked just enough to reveal something vulnerable beneath. She had touched a nerve, or maybe something deeper, like a neural thread, stretched across time. Back in her suite, Elena spread the photos and documents from the storage unit across her bed. Charts, brain scans, medical notes, most of it unreadable. A language of science she could barely decipher, but some things didn't need translation. A photograph caught her eye, a research team. Posed for the camera in 2002, the Ashcrofts, the Vosses, familiar faces frozen in time. And in the back row, barely visible, but unmistakable, Sterling Pierce, not in a suit, but in a lab coat. Not a lawyer, a scientist. And beside him, taking notes, was a woman Elena had seen earlier that evening. Vivian Langley's mother. The puzzle pieces rearranged themselves with terrifying clarity. This wasn't a coincidence. She and Ronan had been placed back into each other's orbit deliberately. Someone had been waiting for the moment they would connect again. Sleep never came. By 3 a.m., Elena gave up trying. The house felt like a dreamscape under moonlight, still, silent, and watchful. She wandered through the corridors, each hallway echoing with her thoughts. Somehow her feet led her to the West Wing, an area she hadn't explored. The architecture changed here, less modern, older, as if part of the original estate had been left untouched, preserved in memory. At the end of the hallway stood a single heavy wooden door. It had a keypad. She stared at it, hesitating, and then, without thinking, her fingers moved. The lock clicked open. She froze. How did I know that? The room beyond was an office, but nothing like Ronan's sterile workspaces. This one was warm, human. Photographs lined the walls, a young Ronan with his parents, awards and framed documents, and paper files stacked in soft chaos across the desk. Thomas Ashcroft's office, preserved like a museum to a man long gone. She crossed the room slowly, drawn to the desk like a magnet. The top drawer slid open easily. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the Ashcroft family crest pressed into its cover. She picked it up heavy, worn, real. "What are you doing in here?" She spun around, heart jumping. Ronan stood in the doorway, barefoot, dressed in a t-shirt and sweatpants. His hair was tousled, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were sharp, alert, suspicious. "That door has a security code," he said. "How did you open it?" Elena swallowed. I didn't think. I just knew." Ronan's expression turned to stone, but behind his eyes something flickered. Fear. Recognition. You shouldn't be here, he said, voice low. I'm not leaving, Elena replied, lifting the leather journal in her hand. Not until you tell me what this is, what our parents were working on, and why we're seeing each other's memories. They're not memories, he said quickly, but there was no strength in the denial. Then what are they, Ronan? She pressed. Why would our parents link our minds? Why did mine die in that fire? You think I know? His voice cracked with sudden anger. I was 10. One day they were at the breakfast table. The next, gone. All I remember is smoke, sirens, and running down a hallway. He stopped. His gaze found hers. With a little girl, Elena whispered. That was me, wasn't it? We were there together. Ronan turned away, crossing the room in silence. He poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter and threw it back in a single gulp. There are pieces missing, he said at last. Large, empty spaces in my memory. The doctors called it trauma, said my brain blocked them out after the fire. Or someone removed them, she said softly. He let out a bitter laugh. You're starting to sound paranoid. Am I? She opened the journal to a page she'd marked. Listen to this. The neural link between subjects 7L and 12T has exceeded expectations. The children can now share sensory input across distances up to 1 mile. Margaret believes that, with refinement, full telepathic communication may be achieved. Ronan yanked the journal from her hands, eyes wide. Where did you get this? In the drawer. And that's not all. There are files and Providence medical records, research notes. Stop! He cut her off, holding up a hand. I don't want to hear any more. How can you not want to know? Elena's voice rose. They experimented on us. They linked our minds. And then, they died. All of them. Ronan's voice flattened. Whatever they were doing, whatever they wanted, it ended when the fire did. Did it? She stepped toward him. Then explain what happens every time we touch. Explain how I knew the access code to your father's office. Explain why Sterling Pierce arranged our marriage. At the mention of Pierce, something shifted in Ronan's eyes. What does he have to do with this? He was part of the research team, she said, pulling out her phone. So was Vivian's mother. Look, she showed him the photo the research team from 2 decades ago. Young, bright-eyed, wearing lab coats, and standing in the back, clear as day, Pierce. Vivian's mother beside him, pen in hand. They're still pulling the strings, she said. Whatever game our parents started, they never stopped playing. Ronan stared at the image for a long time. When he finally looked up, something inside him had cracked. If you're right, he said slowly, then nothing in my life has been mine. Not my company. Not my success. Maybe not even my choices. I don't know what it all means yet, she said quietly. But I want to find out. Don't you? Their eyes met. And for the first time, there was no distance between them. No contract. No arrangement. Only 2 souls tethered by something neither of them could name. The alarm shattered the silence. Security breach. Sector 7. The automated voice echoed through the house like a warning from another life. Ronan moved instantly, pressing his hand to a panel hidden behind a bookshelf. A screen lit up, revealing surveillance feeds. 2 figures, moving fast, photographing documents, pulling files from his private system. They're in my lab, he said, voice low. No one should be able to access that space. He opened another hidden compartment and pulled out a firearm. Stay here. Lock the door. No, Elena said, already moving. I'm coming with you. This isn't up for discussion. It is if they have answers we both need. He stared at her for a second, then gave a tight nod. Fine. Stay close. Don't speak unless I say. They slipped into the shadows of the house down a narrow service stairway Elena hadn't known existed. At the bottom, a concrete corridor led to a reinforced metal door. My research facility, Ronan explained. Only 3 people have the clearance. He checked the feed again. The 2 intruders moved with precision, downloading data, capturing images. Professionals. I recognize them, Elena whispered. They work for Pierce. Ronan's jaw clenched. He typed rapidly into the keypad. Instead of unlocking the door, the keypad triggered a sharp alarm. Red emergency lights flared to life, flooding the corridor in pulsing flashes. I've sealed them in, Ronan said, already checking his security tablet. Backup will be here in 3 minutes. But when the guards arrived, the lab was empty. Only a ventilation grate on the far wall hung loose, swaying slightly, like the breath of a vanished ghost. Inside the lab, chaos lingered in fragments. Papers disturbed, equipment still humming. Ronan scanned the damage with surgical precision. They were after my quantum computing prototypes, he muttered. Same research Vivian tried to sell years ago. Or maybe this, Elena said quietly. She pointed toward a metal drawer left partially ajar. Its label read, Project Legacy. Ronan opened it. Inside was a single folder, thin, but heavy in implication. He pulled it out and opened it. 2 brain scans, recent, dated within the last month. Names typed neatly across the top, Ronan Ashcroft, Elena Voss. Her breath caught. You've been studying us, she whispered. You knew. Ronan looked stunned. I swear I've never seen these before. Someone's been using my lab without authorization. Before she could respond, his security tablet buzzed again. A new message. He read it. His expression darkened. They disabled the cameras. Exactly 9 minutes offline, just enough to extract what they needed. He looked up at her, and the suspicion in his eyes returned like a storm cloud. Convenient timing, isn't it? You start asking about Project Mirror, and tonight this happens? Her voice tightened. You think I'm involved? I think I don't believe in coincidences anymore, he said. You show up right when I need a wife. You know security codes you were never told. You lead me to my father's journal the same night my lab is breached. That's insane, she snapped. If I were here to steal from you, why would I point out the file they were after? Ronan took a step toward her, fury radiating from him like heat. Maybe that was the distraction. Talk about neural connections while your people raid my work. I'm not one of them, she said, holding her ground. Think, Ronan. We're not fighting each other. We're being used. A beat of silence passed, then footsteps. A guard appeared in the doorway, holding something in his gloved hand. Sir? Found this outside the fence line. He held up a single high-heeled shoe. Designer, red, distinctive. Ronan took it. His voice was low and grim. Vivian. She was at the gala, Elena said. She could have slipped away, gathered information, waited for us to leave, or worked directly with Pierce, Ronan added, setting the shoe down. Either way, we need to know exactly what they accessed. He crossed to a terminal, fingers moving quickly over the keys. Elena stood behind him, watching lines of code she didn't understand flash across the screen. After a long moment, he spoke. The encryption systems are untouched, but they got into the neural mapping database. What's that, she asked. Medical tech, he replied. We're developing it to build real-time 3D models of brain activity. It uses quantum computing to render neural pathways. They accessed the files tied to mirror neurons, emotional processing, empathic response systems. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. They're trying to rebuild Project Mirror. Ronan looked at her, disbelief etched into his features. That research died with our parents. Did it? She said. Or did Pierce and the others bury it? And keep it alive in secret? She pointed to the brain scans again. Look at the dates. Someone's been monitoring us, watching us come closer. The marriage, the contract, the orchestrated meeting, it was never about publicity. It was about proximity. They needed us together again. Ronan stared at the scans, at her, and the anger drained away. replaced by something harder to define realization, maybe. Or grief. Come with me, he said quietly. He led her through another security door, deeper into the lab. The hallway narrowed, and at the end was a room that felt more like a vault than a workspace. At its center stood a towering machine, sleek, humming, with chrome arms and a softly glowing center. This, he said, is a prototype, a neural scanner, more advanced than anything currently on the market. He paused, then looked at her, steady and raw. I built it to map the impossible. It's more advanced than anything else in the world, Ronan said softly. It can visualize neural activity in real-time live as it's happening. Elena eyed the machine warily. You want to scan my brain? I want to scan our connection. He looked at her. No trace of cold detachment, now just quiet urgency. If Sterling manipulated this marriage to reawaken some dormant neural link between us, we need to understand what we're dealing with. She hesitated. Is it safe? This machine isn't connected to any network, he assured her. No one can intercept the data. Whatever we find stays between us. He paused, then added, in a voice so low it was almost a confession, I need to know if anything in my life still belongs to me. So did she. Maybe more than anything. How does it work? We lie side by side, he explained. The system maps brain activity, particularly when there's contact. The word lingered between them, weighted with memory and implication. Physical touch had always triggered the visions. Prolonged contact might reveal something more, something buried. Will it hurt? No, but it might show us things we aren't ready to see. They positioned themselves inside the scanner, so close their shoulders nearly touched. Above them, chrome panels whirred softly to life, blue lights tracing the arc of the chamber like a heartbeat. Ready? He asked. No, Elena whispered. But do it anyway. He reached for her hand. The instant their fingers touched, the connection ignited. Flashes tore through her mind sharper, faster, deeper. The lab, the children, the fire. But this time, the images didn't stop. She saw herself and Ronan, smaller, younger, playing chess in a sterile room under the watchful eyes of scientists, laughing in whispers after curfew, learning to feel each other's emotions across space and silence. A shared language that needed no words. Then the tests changed, became colder, darker. Wires, machines, pushing them further, separating them when their bond grew too strong. And finally, the fire. It hadn't been an accident. She saw her mother racing through the smoke, clutching her hand, heard the shouting, felt the rupture, the pain of being torn apart too fast. The neural link had been severed, not shut down. Then nothing, a blackout. Years of silence, but now it was awake again. The machine above them recorded everything, turning impossibility into proof. Lines of data moved in perfect harmony, mapping two minds functioning like one. When it ended, they lay side by side, breathing hard, still holding hands as if letting go would undo everything. We knew each other, Ronan whispered, voice hoarse. Back then, all those years ago, they made us forget, Elena said through tears. They cut the link between us, not completely. He turned his head toward her. It went dormant, but it never died. Beside them, the monitor still glowed. Two separate neural patterns, dancing in perfect synchrony. This is what Pierce wanted, Elena murmured. He knew that if we were reunited, the connection would return. But why? Ronan sat up, pulling her with him. What could they possibly gain by linking us again? The answer struck both of them at once. They turned to each other, the realization passing silently between them. The Pentagon contract, Elena said. My quantum computing research, Ronan added. If they pair it with a working neural interface, she whispered. They could weaponize it, he finished. Soldiers linked on the battlefield, operatives communicating without speaking, empathy as a tactical advantage. They don't just want the tech, she said. They want us. We're the proof it works, Ronan stood suddenly, pulling her to her feet. We have to leave. Now. This house isn't safe anymore. Where can we go that Pierce won't find us? He didn't hesitate. There's a place. A cabin in Vermont, deep in the woods, off-grid, no signals. Not even Isla knows it exists. We'll need evidence, Elena said urgently. The files in Providence. Your father's journal. A thunderous explosion ripped through the floor. The walls shook. That came from the East Wing, Ronan said, already moving. You're sweet. They ran through the darkened corridors, the smell of smoke growing stronger with every step. Security raced past them, radios crackling. When they reached her room, flames poured from the doorway, orange and hungry. Her bed was engulfed. The flames had devoured everything, her bed, her walls, her memories. Everything except what they couldn't afford to lose. They're destroying the evidence, Elena coughed through the smoke, shielding her mouth with her sleeve. Ronan pulled her backward just as a section of the ceiling caved in, sending ash and debris across the hall. No, he said through gritted teeth. They're trying to destroy us. Dawn broke, gently, over the ridges of the Green Mountains, the sky blushing with the first hints of light as their vehicle carved through the dense Vermont forest. Ronan's Range Rover hummed over gravel and winding asphalt, the only sound beside the rustling of trees outside. They had left Newport at 3 a.m. No time for goodbyes, no room for hesitation, only what they could carry: his father's journal, the stolen brain scans, a duffel of clothes, and the growing weight of a truth too large to unsee. Are we being followed? Elena asked, glancing behind them for the 10th time. Unlikely, Ronan said. We changed cars twice, and I disabled every GPS tracker. But with Pierce, you never know. His hands clenched the wheel, knuckles pale, jaw tight. The fire would be written off as an electrical accident. Official records would protect the ones truly responsible. There would be no arrests, no headlines, just silence. Exactly what they wanted. The cabin appeared as if it had grown from the mountain itself, wood and stone nestled deep among the pines, almost invisible from the road. My grandfather built this place, Ronan said as he opened the door, long before Blackwood Technologies. Before all of it, Pierce doesn't know it exists. Inside, the space was warm and quiet. A stone fireplace anchored the living room, modest bedrooms, a kitchen, a study with dust-covered shelves, solar panels, and a backup generator powered the essentials. A satellite dish gave them just enough connections to reach the outside world, but no more. We're safe here, he said, bolting the door behind them, at least for now. They spent the morning in near silence, seated on the living room floor, surrounded by papers and data, the journal, the scans, the remnants of a history neither of them had chosen, but now had no choice but to carry. Listen to this, Elena said, reading from a weathered journal page. The children's bond has surpassed all expectations. They no longer require touch to perceive each other's emotional state. Margaret believes they may be evolving into something new, a form of true telepathic communication. Ronan sat across from her, holding up the brain scans from his lab. The neural pathways are still there, dormant, waiting for us to touch again, Elena finished. But why us? He asked. Why children? She looked at him. He already knew. Because developing brains adapt more easily, she said softly. We were ideal test subjects. He nodded toward a passage in the journal. My father believed adult brains were too rigid, but children's minds, ours, were like soft clay. Moldable, open. They used us, she said bitterly. Their own children, like lab rats. Ronan didn't respond, but through the invisible link that now pulsed steadily between them, Elena felt everything he didn't say: pride, shame, grief. The brilliance of discovery darkened by betrayal. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unlisted number. Storage unit compromised. Destroy everything. Trust no one. H. Hayes. The name hit her like a cold breath. Dr. Hayes. The old man from the boathouse. They're cleaning up everything, Elena said. We have to go public. Expose Project Mirror. All of it. And then what? Ronan's voice was quiet, but sharp. Best case, we end up as test subjects in some government bunker. Worst case, we disappear entirely. Eliminated in the name of national security. So we do nothing? She snapped. Let Pierce weaponize this connection, turn it into some battlefield tool? No, he said firmly. But we don't run in blind either. We need leverage. He crossed the room to the desk and picked up the satellite phone. I'm calling someone. She might help us. Who? Elena asked. Dr. Maya Rodriguez. She runs the neuroscience division at Blackwood Technologies. If anyone can make sense of what was done to us, it's her. Can you trust her? Ronan hesitated. I don't know, he admitted. But she might be the only one left who hasn't sold her soul. She's brilliant, Ronan said, eyes fixed on the road ahead. And she has no ties to the original project. Dr. Maya Rodriguez had agreed to meet them halfway at a private research facility in Albany, owned by a trusted colleague. They would bring their evidence. She would bring the technology to analyze what no one else had dared believe: the living connection between two minds. The drive was long and quiet, and every passing vehicle felt like a shadow waiting to strike. Every stop for gas, every glance from a stranger became a test of their nerves. If something happens to me, Ronan said suddenly as they crossed the New York state line, there's a server in Zurich. Password, Cherokee, 1989. It holds everything: new identity, bank accounts, safe houses. You'll disappear. Elena turned sharply. Nothing is going to happen to you. He glanced at her, and something unspoken passed between them. We both know that's not true, he said. They've already tried once. But this time, she didn't just hear the words, she felt them. Through the invisible thread that now tied them together, his fear for her safety was raw, real. It was no longer about duty or pretense. Somewhere along the way, the transaction had become something else. The facility in Albany was nondescript, tucked into a maze of commercial buildings, with no signage, no welcome, just a metal door and a woman waiting. Dr. Rodriguez was in her 40s, with sharp features and sharper eyes. She spoke little as she led them inside, but every movement spoke of precision. I reviewed the scans you sent, she said once they reached the lab. Frankly, I wouldn't have believed it until I saw the data. Can you figure out what was done to us? Elena asked. I can try, but it'll take hours. We need to monitor both of you. Separately first, then together. As Rodriguez began calibrating the equipment, Ronan turned to Elena. His voice lowered. I'll go first. No, she said, firmly. We do this together. That's the point, isn't it? He looked at her for a long moment and then silently nodded. The tests lasted 4 hours. EEGs, fMRIs, specialized quantum resonance scans developed by Blackwood Technologies itself. They were separated at first, then joined in the final phase. Dr. Rodriguez worked tirelessly, her eyes wide with every passing moment. Finally, she brought their neural maps up on the screen. It's not just theoretical, she said in awe. The connection is real. Physical. Your brains, your entire architectures, have grown around each other. Complementary systems, like two frequencies tuned to the same pitch. Can it be reversed? Ronan asked. Rodriguez blinked, startled. Reverse it? That would be like trying to cut out part of your brain with a hammer. The connection is no longer an add-on. It's who you are now. So we're stuck? Elena asked. But to her own surprise, there was no fear in her voice. Only something close to relief. Not stuck, Rodriguez said softly. Enhanced. You're experiencing a form of communication no human has ever truly achieved. Not just thought, but emotion, intuition, sensation, all in real time. And that's what Pierce wants, Ronan said grimly. Not just technology, he wants control, Rodriguez nodded. And he's not the only one. She turned to another screen and brought up a classified document stamped with the Pentagon seal. A request for proposals, she explained. Project codename Gemini Protocol. Distributed to select contractors 6 months ago. She looked at them both. Blackwood Technologies submitted a bid for this project, but so did Pierce Dynamics. Pierce has his own company? Elena asked, shocked. Founded 3 years ago, Rodriguez confirmed. Focused entirely on neural interface technology, and from what I've seen, they've made remarkable progress. Ronan stared at the screen. Gemini, he murmured. 2 minds, 1 connection. Elena felt her pulse quicken. They're trying to reproduce us. No, Rodriguez corrected, her voice grave. They're trying to control you and build an army from what you are. For a company so new, Ronan said, eyes narrowed at the screen, they've made unsettling progress. He scrolled through the classified document, his expression darkening with each line. They're not just proposing mind-to-mind communication. They're designing a system based directly on our neural architecture. That's why Pierce brought us together, Elena murmured. We're the prototype, Dr. Rodriguez nodded. I believe he's been monitoring your neural activity since the moment you reconnected gathering data in real time to feed his own models. But how? Ronan asked, sharply. My home is swept daily for bugs, surveillance, even trace frequencies. Nothing gets through. Rodriguez hesitated. Then softly, there are other ways. Ronan turned toward her. Like what? If someone had access to your medical history, she said slowly, they could implant nanoreceivers during routine procedures. Annual checkups, scans, injections, Ronan's voice was flat. My executive team manages my medical appointments. Most of them have worked with Pierce's people for years. A cold shiver traced down Elena's spine. We're not just subjects, she said. We're walking data streams. Ronan stood silent for a moment, then made a decision. We go public. Everything, the original project files, the brain scans, the Pentagon documents, all of it. Rodriguez looked at him, eyes sharp. You do that, and your company will crumble. The stock will nosedive. The board will revolt. You'll lose everything you built. His voice was low, steady. If everything I've built was manipulated from the beginning, then it was never mine to begin with. Elena felt it, even before he admitted it, the fracture inside him. A man realizing that his success, his empire, may have been scripted by someone else. That his victories might not have been earned but engineered. But Rodriguez offered a second path. There's another option, she said. Confront Pierce directly. Get him to reveal his intentions. Catch him on record. How? Elena asked. He thinks he's winning, Rodriguez replied. Use that. Let him believe you're ready to cooperate. Offer a partnership Ashcroft's quantum computing, combined with Pierce's neural interface tech. Set a meeting. Record everything. A plan began to form. Ronan would invite Pierce to Blackwood Technologies' Boston headquarters. Rodriguez would outfit the space with advanced recording tools undetectable even by Pierce's surveillance countermeasures. Once they had proof, they would take it public. Not with fear, but with leverage. When Rodriguez stepped out to prepare the equipment, Elena and Ronan remained in the lab, seated across from one another. Between them, a spread of documents, their brain scans, their connection etched out in delicate waves of light. This is dangerous, Elena said softly. If he senses even a hint of a trap, he won't. Ronan's tone was cold, certain. His ego won't let him. He's been planning this for years. He'll want to watch it unfold, face to face. And Vivian? He looked away for a moment, jaw tightening. She was always part of the plan, just like her mother before her, embedded in the science and in my life. The engagement was a setup, another pawn in Pierce's long game. The betrayal sat between them, layered on top of so many others. But another truth was beginning to rise, and it had nothing to do with Pierce or the Pentagon. There's something else, Elena said gently. The connection. It's changing, I know, Ronan said. I can feel what you feel sometimes. I hear your thoughts before you speak. She nodded. After this is over, after Pierce is exposed, what happens to us? It was a question neither of them had been ready to ask, because while their marriage had been a contract, this, the bond, the thread, the unspoken understanding, was something entirely real. But before either of them could speak the truth aloud, Ronan's phone rang. Unknown number. He pressed speaker. Mr. Ashcroft, came a smooth voice, unmistakably familiar. Sterling Pierce, I've heard you've been trying to reach me. Ronan stiffened. How did you get this number? Pierce chuckled softly. The same way I know you're in Albany with Dr. Rodriguez and your charming wife. His voice was calm, casual. Like he was talking about the weather. I know everything. I always have, Thorne. Pierce's voice slid through the speaker like silk over glass, smooth and sharp at once. Through the invisible thread that now bound them, Elena felt Ronan's jolt of fear a flicker, quickly buried beneath years of training in steel. What do you want, Sterling? Ronan asked, his tone flat. To finish what our parents began, to unlock the full potential of Project Mirror. A beat of silence. Then you and Elena were... You're extraordinary. Your integration goes far beyond anything we ever imagined. So you arranged our marriage, Ronan said, his voice tight, to study us. And the Pentagon contract, Elena added. Was that part of your little experiment too? Pierce chuckled. The contract is very real. The military is deeply invested in the idea of telepathically linked operatives. Your company just made the perfect front for our continued research. Our research? Ronan snapped. You were a lab assistant. That's all you ever were. Pierce's voice hardened like a blade. Is that what you think? Your father stole the neural mapping algorithm. It was mine. 15 years of my life, and he branded it with his name like a trophy. Elena and Ronan exchanged a glance. This wasn't just about science. It was personal. A vendetta, masquerading as innovation. If you want credit so badly, Ronan said, go public. Publish your findings. Too late for that, Pierce replied. But I'm offering something better, a partnership. Your quantum platform, my interface system, and your connection with Elena as living proof. And if we say no, Pierce's tone turned to poison, then I'll release the evidence that you and your wife have been conducting unauthorized human experimentation. I'll make sure the world knows you've implanted experimental neural tech into unwilling Blackwood employees for years. That's a lie, Ronan growled. Is it? Check your executive wellness program. Ask Dr. Cheng about the implants she's approved. Ask yourself why you never questioned it. Ronan's face lost all color. Simone, his most trusted advisor, his ally for over a decade. She had been part of it all? You have 24 hours, Pierce continued. Come to Pierce Dynamics tomorrow at noon. Bring your wife. Bring the research. If you try to expose me before then, I'll release everything, including the evidence that the fire that killed your parents wasn't an accident. The line went dead. The silence afterward was heavier than anything either of them had felt in days. He's bluffing, Elena said, but even she didn't believe it. Maybe, Ronan whispered, pale. But what if he's not? What if my company has been experimenting on people, and I didn't even know? She took his hand, The current sparked instantly, warm, familiar, unbreakable. Then we find out, she said, together, and we stop him. They stepped out into the night, hearts heavy, plans shifting. Neither noticed the small drone hovering just beyond the lab window, its lens recording every move. Nor did they see the woman in the black car nearby. Dr. Maya Rodriguez held her phone close to her mouth. Her voice was low. They've taken the bait. They'll be at Pierce Dynamics tomorrow at noon. A woman's voice replied, cool and amused. Vivian Hawthorne. Perfect, she said. Make sure they bring everything, especially the brain scans. And after? Rodriguez asked. Vivian laughed softly. After? Oh, accidents happen, especially to people who know too much. Later that night, Elena sat by the rain-speckled window of her small apartment in Providence. It wasn't much, but after the fire, the lies, the chase, it felt like a sanctuary. They had chosen it as their temporary hideout, a place not linked to either of them. A pause in the storm. Ronan worked at the kitchen table, fingers flying over the keys, lost in code and silence. The implants, he said suddenly. He's lying. I checked the executive records. There's nothing there. No neural tech, no anomalies. One lie, Elena murmured, among many. But the threat remains. Their plan had evolved. They wouldn't walk blindly into Pierce's trap. No. First, they'd gather proof. Then they'd take him down on their terms. Ronan had been at it for hours, eyes red, fingers moving in swift, precise keystrokes as lines of code danced across the screen. Look at this, he said suddenly, turning the laptop toward her. Elena leaned in. On the screen, a fragment of classified code from Pierce Dynamics' internal server, labeled plainly, almost innocently, Project Mirror Resurrection. He's developing a new neurotransmitter, Ronan explained, voice low and tight, military grade, designed to link multiple minds into a synchronized network. He paused, jaw clenched, and he's using our connection as the blueprint. Can he actually make it work? Elena asked, without us. Eventually, Ronan admitted, but we're his shortcut, his proof that the system works. He needs our brain scans, our DNA, and the quantum algorithm I spent a decade perfecting. He raked a hand through his already messy hair, frustration rippling through their connection like static. Elena sat down beside him, their shoulders brushing, the now familiar pulse between them. The energy that once startled now felt right. Anchoring. What if, she said, voice steady, we gave him what he wanted but poisoned the source? Ronan turned to her, eyes narrowing. Fake data? Corrupted. Just enough to pass inspection, but useless when he tries to use it. His expression lit with something between admiration and vengeance. He understands code, yes, but not quantum structure. If I introduce just the right deviations in the algorithm sublayers, he won't detect the flaws until it's too late. They worked side by side into the night, rewriting files, doctoring documents, embedding silent failure into every line of code. And through their strengthening bond, they worked like a single mind. Elena handed him tools before he asked. Ronan finished her sentences before she began. At midnight, Elena froze. A tingling started at the base of her skull, sharp and unnatural. Someone's watching, she whispered. Ronan slammed the laptop shut, then 3 soft knocks at the door. They looked at each other, communicating without words. Ronan grabbed his gun. Elena crept forward. Who is it? She called. It's Hayes, came the strained reply. Please, quickly. She opened the door. Dr. Hayes stood there, older than she remembered, breathless, eyes wide with fear. They know, he gasped. Rodriguez, she's with Pierce. Tomorrow's meeting is a trap. He thrust a flash drive into Ronan's hand. This is your father's full research. Everything Pierce doesn't know exists. Why are you helping us? Elena asked. Hayes hesitated, guilt etched deep into the lines of his face. Because I helped design the original interface, he said softly. But I didn't know they were using children, not until it was too late. He looked them both in the eyes. Your parents tried to stop it when they found out about the military applications. Pierce made sure they couldn't. Ronan's voice was barely above a whisper. He killed them. Hayes nodded. He started the fire to silence them. But before they died, they severed your link and hid you both knowing what would happen if Pierce got full control. Elena's voice trembled. Then why now? Why reconnect us after all these years? Because your quantum platform changed the equation, Hayes said. With your computing, the link can evolve beyond anything they imagined. Pierce has been waiting for this moment for 15 years. He checked his watch nervously. I can't stay. They're looking for me. But tomorrow, don't go to a high-pitched whine sliced through the air. Hayes stumbled, a dart protruding from his neck. Sniper! Elena cried, catching a flash of movement on the rooftop across the street. Ronan dragged her to the ground as a second dart shattered the window above them. Tranquilizer, he said, checking Hayes's pulse. He's alive. We need to move now. They gathered only what mattered: the flash drive, the corrupted data, and Hayes's unconscious body. Rain pelted their shoulders as they hauled him into Ronan's SUV. And then Elena staggered. Ronan, she clutched her arm, pulling out a thin dart now embedded in her shoulder. The world spun, colors blurred, gravity tilted sideways. Elena! Ronan's voice was distant, distorted. The last thing she saw was his face twisted in fury and panic as he reached for her, then darkness. She woke to the slow, rhythmic beep of medical monitors. The light was harsh, white, sterile. Her mind was fogged, but her connection to Ronan pulsed faintly beneath the surface. Still there, still alive, but somewhere far away. Her vision returned in fragments, light, shape, then color. The air was too clean, the walls too white. It wasn't a hospital. It was something else, something colder, more calculated. Machines beeped softly around her, their screens glowing with neural waveforms. Electrodes clung to her temples. She couldn't move restraints at her wrists and ankles. A shadow stepped into view. "Welcome back, Mrs. Ashcroft," said Sterling Pierce. His voice smooth and sickeningly pleasant. He wore a charcoal suit, every detail pressed and perfect. "Apologies for the dramatic extraction, but you left us little choice." Elena tried to sit up. Nothing moved. Her mouth was dry, her throat raw. "Where's Ronan?" she croaked. "Nearby," Pierce replied casually. "Also enjoying our hospitality." "Remarkable, really. Your neural patterns remain synchronized, even under sedation and isolation. Quite a feat of biological engineering." The door slid open. Vivian Langley entered, eyes empty of warmth, followed by Dr. Rodriguez. "Is she stable?" Vivian asked, businesslike. "Completely," Rodriguez replied, adjusting dials on the neural monitor. "We can begin the mapping sequence at any time." Pierce smiled as Elena's eyes widened. "Relax," he said. "We're not here to harm you. Not permanently. We just need to record the neural pathways created by your connection to Ronan." "And then what?" Elena forced her voice steady. "You keep us here like lab rats?" "Temporarily," Pierce admitted. "Once the interface has been successfully replicated, we won't need you." He glanced at his watch. "The Pentagon delegation arrives in 3 hours. By then, we'll have a working prototype, your connection, as the blueprint. So we become proof," Elena said. "A concept brought to life." "Exactly," he said, almost fondly. "Your contribution to national security will be significant, if anonymous." Even through the fog in her brain, she reached inward. Ronan. She pushed the thought like a flare into the dark. The connection they had built it together strengthened it. It had to be enough, but there was nothing. Just silence. Pierce cocked his head, watching her. Trying to reach your husband, he said, amused. Admirable, but futile. These chambers were specifically designed to suppress neurotransmissions. You can't keep us here forever, Elena said through gritted teeth. Someone will come looking. Who? Vivian sneered. Your marriage was orchestrated by Sterling. Your home conveniently burned to the ground. As far as the world knows, you're off-grid grieving, privately. No one is coming. But as they spoke, Elena tested her left wrist. A subtle shift. A give. Just a little more. Then it hit. A sharp, searing spike shot through her skull. She screamed, body arching against the restraints. Alarms exploded across the room. What's happening? Pierce barked. Rodriguez rushed to the monitors. Her neural activity is spiking surging. She's breaking through the dampers. Suddenly, Ronan's voice, not in the room, in her mind. They're holding us at Pierce Dynamics. I've hacked security, your floor is open. Get out. Now. The pain vanished. Elena gasped, limp in the chair, feigning collapse. Beneath the mask of weakness, her mind was crystal clear. Recalibrate the dampers, Pierce snapped. In double security on Ashcroft's chamber. Rodriguez scrambled to obey. Elena stayed still, waiting. Then finally, the restraint on her left wrist slipped free. She didn't move, not yet. Rodriguez stepped closer. The signal's stabilizing, she reported. But I've never seen neural patterns like this. Their link is evolving, adapting to our interference. Pierce's eyes narrowed. Then accelerate the procedure. We can't afford more surprises. But the lights cut out. The room plunged into red as emergency systems activated. Through the bond, she felt at Ronan's urgency. Now, Elena. In one swift movement, she tore off the electrodes, swung her freed arm, and slammed a metal tray into Rodriguez's temple. The doctor crumpled. Pierce shouted. Vivian lunged. But Elena was already moving. Pierce lunged for the alarm. But Elena moved faster. Fueled by the fire in her chest and the steady current of Ronan's strength pulsing through their bond, she slammed him back with unflinching force. The fight was quick. Brutal. When it was over, Pierce and Rodriguez lay unconscious on the cold floor. Vivian was pinned behind an overturned equipment rack, too dazed to move. Elena tore the remaining restraints from her arms, heart thundering, and sprinted into the hallway. All along the corridor, security guards lay unconscious, Ronan's work. The bond between them had become a lifeline, and now she followed it like a compass. Each step guided by the pulse they shared. She found him outside a server room, blood running from a cut above his eyebrow, locked in combat with two guards. She didn't hesitate. Together, they moved as one perfectly synchronized, each anticipating the other. The guards never stood a chance. We have to destroy the data, Ronan gasped, before the Pentagon gets here. Inside the server room, time was their enemy. Ronan hacked into the core systems while Elena stood guard, pulse racing with adrenaline. Done, he said, fingers flying over the keys. Initiating full data purge. There won't be anything left. They fled before the first line of code could vanish. Down stairwells, through maintenance corridors. Elena moved without needing direction, Ronan's memories, absorbed through their connection, guiding her. In the parking garage, sirens howled behind them. Pierce had woken up. There, Elena spotted a security vehicle keys dangling from the ignition. They dove inside and tore through the gates as red lights flashed behind them. Ronan reached for her hand, and when their fingers met, the current between them flared. It was stronger now, anchored by shared survival, shared fear, and something more. Trust. We need to go to Newport. Ronan said suddenly, eyes on the road. Elena didn't ask why. She already knew. The end would begin where it all started. The Blackwood estate stood in eerie silence against the twilight sky. Partially rebuilt after the fire, it looked half alive, like a ghost trying to remember its name. Security lights flickered, but the house itself was dark, abandoned in the chaos Pierce had created. "He'll come here," Ronan said, voice low. "He knows we have Hayes's flash drive. He can't risk what's on it being released." "What's on it exactly?" Elena asked. "Everything," Ronan said. "The full files from Project Mirror, including proof Pierce sabotaged the original lab and orchestrated our parents' deaths." He hesitated. "And something else. A fail-safe protocol." They entered through the emergency tunnel, emerging into the untouched section of the main house. His father's office had somehow survived the fire, preserved like a relic of a man the world never truly knew. Ronan moved to a hidden terminal behind a shelf and inserted the flash drive. "The Nightingale Protocol," he whispered. "It's not what Pierce thinks." The screen bloomed to life, filled with schematics, neural maps, and lines of encrypted code more advanced than anything they'd seen inside Pierce Dynamics. "Our fathers saw this coming," Ronan explained, typing rapidly. "They knew Pierce would push the research toward something dangerous. So they built in a back door, a way to disable the technology forever." Elena leaned closer, eyes scanning the cascading designs. "How does it work?" "It requires two neural signatures," he said, ours, together. When activated, it sends out a feedback pulse that destroys every transmitter built using our connection as a template. She swallowed. "So? It wipes everything? All of it. The military version, Pierce's prototypes, everything. Gone." He turned to her, expression soft but solemn. "But there's a catch." He hesitated, then held her gaze. "It only works if we're completely in sync. No walls, no masks, absolute vulnerability." The words hit heavier than she expected. Their bond had grown stronger with every shared memory, every breathless escape, but they still guarded parts of themselves, fragments untouched, scars unrevealed. "Total vulnerability," Elena repeated, barely audible. Ronan nodded. "It means no hiding. Not from each other, not even from ourselves." He took her hand. "Are you willing to try?" Before she could answer, the alarm blared. On the screen, security cameras lit up. Pierce's convoy had arrived. "They're here," Ronan said grimly, eyes on the security feed. 3 black SUVs, 8 armed men, a storm of silence and steel heading straight for them. "We're out of time." He activated the Nightingale Protocol. While Elena barricaded the door with whatever furniture she could push, Ronan loaded the program into the terminal. The screen blinked to life, prompting the final step. 2 slim headsets waited. Familiar, unforgiving. "Once we begin," he said quietly, "we can't stop. If the synchronization fails, it all fails." She looked at him and nodded. "I trust you." They slipped the headsets on. The pounding on the door began sharp, brutal, growing louder. But inside the neural interface, there was only stillness. A quiet space between minds, opening like a doorway between souls. At first, it felt like it always had the soft current they'd shared since the kiss at City Hall. But then, it deepened. Walls fell. Memories poured like water through a breach. She saw his loneliness after the fire, the ache he buried beneath ambition. He saw her foster homes, the silent nights she spent clinging to dreams of becoming someone who could heal. They saw everything, every fracture, every hope, every moment they never spoke aloud, now fully shared. The door splintered behind them. Pierce stormed in, flanked by Vivian and 2 armed guards. "Step away from the terminal," he barked. They didn't move. They couldn't. The synchronization had reached its final phase. Their minds were no longer two, they were one. Pierce's eyes widened in sudden horror. Stop them! Too late. Together, Ronan and Elena activated the protocol. A silent pulse rippled through the neural network, unseen, unstoppable. A failsafe forged in love and loss. Pierce screamed. Vivian collapsed beside him, clutching her head. The guards stumbled, dazed and reeling. The implants designed for control had turned against their creators. Pierce's empire, built on secrets and stolen minds, fell in a single breath. When the silence returned, Pierce lay unconscious. Vivian stared blankly at the ground, her neural enhancements forever fried. The guards were disarmed physically and mentally. Ronan and Elena removed their headsets, but the bond between them remained, no longer tethered by wires or machines. They were connected now by something greater, a permanent thread, a bridge between hearts and minds. 3 months later, the cliffs behind the Blackwood estate were quiet again, painted gold by the sinking sun. The house rebuilt, the secrets buried, the truth exposed. Pierce and his collaborators had been arrested, facing charges of murder, conspiracy, and illegal human experimentation. Blackwood Technologies had survived the scandal but emerged changed. Now their focus was healing, not warfare. Neural technology for medicine, for empathy, for hope. Do you regret it? Elena asked, fingers laced in his. Losing the contract? The glory? Ronan smiled, drawing her close. Not for a second. Some things are too dangerous to belong in a weapon. Their connection hummed, no longer strange, no longer new. It simply was, natural, luminous, unbreakable. What began as a transaction, a marriage on paper, had become something sacred. I never believed in soulmates, Ronan whispered. She looked up at him, but I believe in us. Their lips met under a sky painted in twilight. No visions, no memories, just the quiet, perfect stillness of two minds beating as one, and a future they would never face alone.